Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 129 of Brew Talk with Mr. Beer. My name is Robert. I'll be your host for today's show. Filming from a little different location. Got a little bit of a cold, so bear with me. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So today's episode is adding pumpkin to your beer. How to actually do it. I thought it would be a useful topic for this time of year, as pumpkin beers are extremely popular. I had Ashley write this up for me, so we made sure that we got all the right facts. I'm going to be referencing my notes a lot for this video. If you want to read our notes for this video, just go to our blog page, mrbeer.com/blog. So like most things when adding extras, like pumpkin, it depends on, a lot depends on, what you want the final product to taste like. So with most fruit additions, pumpkin puree can be added either during the boil, during fermentation. But pumpkin puree also has another area that it can be added, which is during the grain steep, which is something that's kind of special to pumpkin purees that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So first things first, what form of pumpkin is the best to add to beer? Canned pumpkin puree is typically the easiest and most convenient way to add it. I think all of our recipes do that. So it's already pasteurized and it's ready to use. But make sure you're using the puree, not pumpkin pie filling. So you're going to use pumpkin puree. The pre-made filling can contain ingredients that would be undesirable in the brewing process. And it's also typically pre-spiced, which prevents you from adjusting the level of spice or lack of spice that you want in your beer. So always use pumpkin puree. Next question. Should I cook the pumpkin puree before adding it? Typically, yes. It is a good idea to caramelize the pumpkin puree before adding it to your brew, even if that means if it's just a quick cook in your brew pot at the beginning of your brewing process. And what this does is it will help caramelize the sugars within the pumpkin, and it helps to taste less raw, like squash-like, which isn't very desirable in your beer, and you'll get more of that pumpkin flavor that you love, like a pumpkin pie, which is amazingly delicious. We just launched some new recipes yesterday, and there's a Midnight Lantern pumpkin stout that is really good. You guys check that one out. A bit off topic there, but back to the notes here. So how much pumpkin can I add for a 2-gallon batch? So in most cases, the max yield should not exceed more than 15 ounces of pumpkin puree, which is about 1 can. That's the most you'll want to add for a 2-gallon batch. Brewing a 5-gallon batch, you can double that to 30 ounces if you want. When should I add my pumpkin? This is the question that most people want to know. So pumpkin can be added to your brew in 3 primary ways. The first way is in your boil, and for this method, the pumpkin is typically added in the final 5 minutes of your wort boil. The second option is adding cooled caramelized puree to your beer midway through fermentation, just like you would other fruit additions. This method will preserve the most pumpkin flavor by adding it that way. So you want a heavy pumpkin beer, add it later in fermentation. Same thing for the fruit. You add all that stuff later. The third method for adding pumpkin is to add it to your grain steeping water. This may sound odd, but actually has some great benefits for your yeast. Now we're getting to some scientific terms here that I am not qualified to pronounce, but I'll do my best here. So pumpkin contains a fruit enzyme called protease, I guess. We're going to go with that. That's what we're going to go with. It's a powerful protein. So adding this enzyme to your grain steep helps to free up the nitrogen locked up within your grains and releases them from the protein, making them more available for your yeast. Yeast love free nitrogen, and they will show you through a vigorous, healthy fermentation. So if you're going to add it in your grain steep, it's very good for your yeast. It will ramp up your fermentation like crazy. You should just be aware of that. But interesting process there. You probably want to reference these notes when you're going back and watching this video. How much spice should you add? So obviously, when I add pumpkin puree, you're going to add pumpkin spice as well. This depends largely on your personal preference, but a good starting range is typically 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. More can be added if desired, but typically 1 tablespoon is a general maximum for a size of Mr. Beer batch. And if you're creating, your own spice blend, start with half a teaspoon of each powdered spice component. So can you use fresh pumpkin puree? Yes, fresh pumpkin puree can be used, but if you desire to add it during fermentation, you want to cook it to kill off any infectious pathogens. This can easily be done through the caramelization process. So to recap this, brewing pumpkin is awesome this time of year. You can add it 3 different ways to your grain boil. midway through fermentation, or just adding it in, with all your other stuff in there. Adding it into your wort when you're mixing all that up. So that is good to know. If you want the most heavy pumpkin flavor, add it later in fermentation. That's what a lot of our recipes do. Sometimes you add it at the beginning, but it is definitely a good thing to experiment with. So if you want to do like a split batch, add some up front, some in the end, see how it goes. Add your spice. You always usually add that later as well. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Sorry about the audio and the video setting, but we had to keep the show rolling on for 129 episodes. Make sure you're going to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're just at Mr.Beer on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we still have our site-wide sale going on this week. You get a free hat with orders over $25. So make sure head over to MrBeer.com and check out that sale and get some of our new recipes. We launched 6 or 8 new recipes, 4 2 gallons and 3 5 gallons, I think. So 7 total. So make sure to check those out. You kind of have to navigate to the category structure to find those, but they're in there. If you're wondering where they are, what they are, shoot us a note through customer service and we will shoot you a link to those. We'll wrap it up this week and I will talk to you guys next week. Cheers. Cheers.